These are the cars I'm going to be involved with this weekend. I'm the MC for the factory lightweight guys and the drivers. This is the display Jim Kramer put together. And Kramer put together a batch of fabulous original cars on the factory lightweight display, as well as a display of engines. We'll have to walk through there when they're uncovered, but just take a look at what we've got here. So here's a 1964. That's a 426 Hemi. And Spencer's Dodge out of Wichita, Kansas was campaigning this car. That painted rear rim was to allow for you to see if there were problems with traction as you were getting ready to go for your run. 64 Dodge. And behind it we've got, of course, the Hank Taylor campaigned Plymouth. And this one is that's a Hemi as well, Mayflower 5. And I shot this car in Kearney, Nebraska. Sorry, it's getting a little long in the morning here. I need coffee. Kearney, Nebraska. I shot this at the Hemi reunion we did there. And that Kramer and Dick Towers were involved with. But again, gorgeous, gorgeous vehicle here, restored. And I'm pretty sure Len Grimsley was the owner and still is the owner. So again, typewriter in the dash. And Taylor was a teenager. His dad had bought him this car. H.L. Shahan was the tuner. And in '65, he had a slight accident in Union Hill, Tennessee. And Mommy said no more drag racing, and that was the end of that. So... and this is Len Grimsley too. As far as I know, this might have been the car that recently turned up as Hank's first car. Don't hold me to that. I remember hearing rumors about something going on with that. But again, another aluminum front end car. This one's a Max Wedge from earlier in 1964. And the Zen Master 62. Dave Mason was the driver. I don't know who owns it now. Pretty cool. It's got the window sticker there. If you went to Chevrolet to buy one of these, it was $3,600 if you could get one. And let's see if there's a delivery date on this. I'm not sure if there's, let's see if it says 1 of 18. Well, the factory aluminum front ends. So I'm not sure if it's a 409, 425 or a 409, 409 horsepower car. But again, gorgeous. Crazy paint, crazy paint. Probably one of the brightest looking super stock cars of that era. Impala SS. There's another 64 Dodge. Taken out of storage, it's been nostalgia racing. Burbank, Illinois. Torque Flight by Turbo Terry. As you can see, there were some problems with all that aluminum. Didn't survive a lot of hard handling. And we'll talk a little bit about that later today. Aberdeen Speed Center and the Ingenuity 2. Stahl and Associates sticker on the back there. So Jerry Stahl was involved in this. Wilson Motor Company. Hands off the aluminum, and it's a Hemi in lightweight Plymouth from that time period. And we're going to finish off this little segment right this moment with Jim Kramer's 1964 Dodge Boys. This was Bill Jenkins and Dave Strickler. And this car, of course, is no longer in race paint, but it was painted back in 1968, and it's got some great history to it. And here's some pictures that Kramer put together as part of the display. Again, a lot of work went into this project, and we'll walk the line from the other side now. So we were looking at that Spencer Dodge a few minutes ago. Here's was its main competition in 1963 and 64 would have been Ford. Now, because these were all aluminum cars, there is not a fiberglass front-end Thunderbolt in this display. But this is a 63.5 Galaxy lightweight. 63.5 model was released just before the Daytona 500 to make use of this new backlight. You can see the backlight on the 62 next to it is pretty sharply cut down. The 63.5 swoopy cab, kind of one of the first aero stylings deliberately done for the sake of competition. by a production manufacturer in for stock car racing. And this is, of course, is a lightweight. Now what's interesting is I don't see a teardrop hood on here. I'm assuming it's got a lightweight nose on it. I'm assuming it's got fiberglass, or it's got aluminum front end on it. But I would have thought it would have had the big air box. But maybe I don't know my Ford stuff well enough. And maybe I don't think they ever hammered the front end in aluminum. I think that was all fiberglass. So maybe in '63 they had this to start with, and then the high riser came out later that year. In fact, I think that is what happened. So, sorry guys, again, a little rusty on my Ford background here. And Bob Martin, the Jerry Alderman Ford sales in Indianapolis. This is a '62 version with the 405, which I don't know if that was that 406 cubic inch motor. Again, it was in '62 that FIA and AUKUS met and set the limit at 7 liters, which was 427 inches, and that was why everybody stepped up to the game to 426 and 427 in 1963. This is '62. This is AFX. So this car was one of only a handful that would have been built by the factory to campaign in that particular part of the world for racing. So actually, he's got some interest here. Let's see, lightweight Galaxy, just in time for the NHRA Nationals in 1962. Now, of course, that 409, 425 horsepower. '62 Chevrolet ate their lunch, everybody's lunch, in the '62. Only this car and 3 others remain. 6 were rebodied into '63.5s, including those of Gas Ronda, Les Ritchie, and Dick Brannon. All right. And Nick Smith brought in what is arguably one of the most infamous of all of the FX packages. This was a Tempest station wagon, 421 on the front end with a transaxle. And hydraulic ground, had 4-speed power shift transaxle and hydraulic operated dry clutch. Aluminum head, front fenders, grill surround, valance panel, and radiator supports. Aluminum cross-flow ventilator and overflow. Plexiglass windshield. Again, they built a handful of these to run. They ran at the winter races in 1963, and soon after is when GM pulled the plug on their racing program, and that was the end of the development on those. Again, here's a 1963 Impala. Pat Loeb. Again, I'm going to assume, based on the fact that it's here, this is a 409, 427, 425 horsepower version, 1963. Dave Colbert from New York ran this car. Again, that '63 nose is pretty unmistakable. It was big and bad, and these things went fast. Another aluminum car, also by Pat Loeb, in black. Red interior. There was nothing really lightweight about these cars at that point, other than that aluminum front end. And you had to run a full interior by NHRA's rules at the time. The radio delete, heater delete. Of course, the big Chief Pontiac. And SSS, super stock, was one of the categories that they had created just to try to figure out where to put some of these cars. I think it only ran at one race, either Pomona or at Pomona or Indy in '62. So, Catalina Sports Coupe, sticker price $45.04. Check it out. That racing package was $1,342. Big dollars, big coin in 1962. So. And I hope that's 62. It could be 63, but again, we're early enough. The signs aren't out yet, so. And the high and mighty, another '64 Hemi Dodge. Gordon Rohde owns this car. Cool paint for a 1964 vehicle. I like the up and down lettering. Again, the factory was good, home of the hot ones. The factory was good about supplying information. There was testing that went on at Detroit Dragway and other places, and they could update the information on how the cars ran and what happened. But 64 was pretty early on in that process. So, and this car was running AFX, which let them, of course, put a big slick in the back. If you ran super stock, you were limited to that 8-inch factory tire, and you had to really know how to play it to get it to not smoke it off the starting line. If you went to AFX, you could put a bigger tire underneath it, and off you'd go. So, cool piece. 63 Max Wedge. Torque flight by Godfrey's of Indianapolis. Obviously, push button torque flight. Big dedicated to safety NHRA decal in the rear window. Iskandarian 505 Magnum. Of course, the big difference between the 1964 Hemi and the 1964 Max Wedge is that dimple in the center. Both aluminum front end cars, though. And here's a 63 Max Wedge. Now, what happened in 63 was Chrysler had sold the first batch of super stock cars pretty much out, and they used aluminum parts on the second batch. There were only 50 made from the factory with the aluminum front end on it, but they did have extra parts so they could give racers who did not get aluminum the spare pieces. The 330 was the lightest weight body you could get. So we've got a street plate on it, so watch out, kiddies. To be honest with you, this is my highlight for the weekend of all the cars, and you can see I backed that up with my own award from MCACN for this event. Mike Guffey, I saw this car in Guffey's garage back in the early 1990s when he had just bought it, and there wasn't much there. He told me it's got the front end sheet metal off of another famous super stocker, and the fenders had to be carefully massaged. The car itself was gone, it's just the front end sheet metal. And again, they rebuilt this set of stall headers with that crazy striping on it. And again, awesome car from 64. Now, Guffey was telling me yesterday, and I'm going to try to sit down with him a little more today if I have time, but he was able to procure a October of 1963, very early Hemi experimental casting to put the engine together for this car. And he's got some pictures of some of the things that are different about this from the standard block. If you have my Hemi book, you know that the factory ran into some big problems going into the early 1964 when they found out that under the load cycle for 500 miles, the piston thrust was so hard to the one side it was splitting the block down the center. This block is actually earlier than any of those castings. This might have been from the very first four blocks, probably at Indianapolis. And again, this is a fabulous, fabulous car. A little bit of history, of course. Bill Jenkins and Dave Strickler were the Dodge boys in 1964 and 65. 1964 and then into 65, they split up, and Jenkins went on his own with the Black Arrow car, and Strickler had his own deal with this part. In 65, he got an ultra wheelbase car, and but anyway, I'm digging this thing, and we'll be back. This is stunker, and I got to be honest, I'm just blown away looking at it.